The elevator doors slid open on the top floor, releasing a wave of laughter, perfume, and money into the hallway. Light spilled out like something alive, reflecting off marble walls and gold accents that existed purely to remind everyone inside that this place was not meant for people who cleaned floors. The city lay beyond the glass walls, distant and obedient, reduced to sparkling dots far below. Inside, guests moved with careless confidence, their voices overlapping in polished tones, their gestures relaxed in the way only people with nothing to lose could afford. At the far end of the room stood the piano. It dominated the space without making a sound. Glossy black, flawless, its lid propped open like a mouth waiting to speak. It had been flown in from Europe for the occasion, or so someone had bragged earlier, though no one had touched it since the movers left. It wasn't there to be played. It was there to be admired. A symbol. Like everything else. Near the service entrance, a man in a dark uniform pushed a cart slowly along the wall, careful not to interrupt conversations. His movements were practiced, invisible by design. He wiped a spill before anyone noticed it had happened, replaced an empty glass without being asked, and kept his eyes down. He had learned long ago that attention was dangerous in rooms like this. A sharp laugh cut through the hum of voices. Honestly, a woman's voice said, loud enough to be heard over the music piped softly through hidden speakers. If boredom were a sport, I'd be winning tonight. A cluster of guests chuckled on cue. She stood near the piano, tall and poised, her posture effortless, as if gravity itself respected her. The dress she wore clung perfectly, expensive without screaming for attention. Her expression held that familiar blend of confidence and impatience, the look of someone who was used to being the most interesting person in any room and resented moments when reality failed to cooperate. Her gaze drifted lazily over the crowd, assessing, dismissing, until it stopped moving. The janitor felt it before he saw it. That subtle shift in the air when someone important decided you existed. You, she said, pointing with two fingers like she was selecting an item from a menu. The conversations nearest to her faltered. Heads turned. He froze, one hand still gripping the handle of his cart. For a moment, he wondered if she meant someone else. Then her eyes locked onto his, sharp and unmistakable. Yes, she said again, smiling. You. Do you play? A beat passed. I'm sorry, he said quietly. The piano, she clarified, gesturing behind her. Do you play it? A ripple of amusement moved through the guests. A man near the bar smirked. Someone lifted a phone, sensing potential entertainment. No, ma'am, he answered. His voice stayed even, but his chest tightened. That's disappointing, she said. It would have been much more interesting if you did. She turned slightly, addressing the room now. Can you imagine? A hidden genius among us. Her eyes flicked back to him. Though I suppose miracles are in short supply these days. Laughter followed, light and effortless. He nodded once, already shifting his weight to leave. If you'll excuse me, I need to. Wait, she interrupted. The words snapped like a command. He stopped. She tilted her head, studying him with curiosity that felt less like interest and more like inspection. What's your name? He hesitated. I'd rather just finish my job. A few people exchanged looks. The humor sharpened, edging closer to cruelty. She smiled wider. Modest too. How refreshing. She tapped the edge of the piano with a manicured nail, the faint click echoing more loudly than it should have. Tell you what. Let's make tonight memorable. If you can sit down and play this piano properly, I'll marry you. For half a second, the room didn't react. Then laughter exploded. Not polite chuckles this time. Real laughter. Loud. Unrestrained. Some guests leaned on each other, delighted. Others clapped, encouraging the spectacle. The janitor felt heat rush to his face. His ears rang. That's not funny. Someone muttered, though they didn't say it loudly enough to matter. She lifted her hands as if calming the room. Relax. It's a joke. Mostly. Her eyes never left him. Unless you want to prove me wrong. Security shifted near the walls, uncertain whether this was entertainment or a problem. He swallowed. I don't play. She raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? Yes. Because you seem awfully nervous for someone who doesn't. The words landed harder than the laughter. He straightened, forcing his shoulders back. I don't belong up there. A man near the window scoffed. At least he knows his place. The comment drew another wave of laughter. She crossed her arms. Belonging is such a strange concept. I didn't belong here once either. She paused, then smiled again. Or so people told me. The irony went unnoticed. He looked around the room. Crystal glasses. Designer suits. Eyes that slid over him without seeing him. He had cleaned rooms like this his entire adult life, always careful not to leave fingerprints on other people's wealth. I should get back to work, he said softly. No, she replied. Stay. The firmness in her tone made it clear it wasn't a request. The room quieted just enough for discomfort to settle in. Come on, she added lightly. Don't ruin the fun. Fun. He glanced at the piano again. Its surface reflected the lights, the people, the entire scene warped and glossy. For a moment, something flickered across his face, an expression so brief no one recognized it for what it was. Memory. He took a step back. A murmur rippled through the crowd. She sighed theatrically. I suppose I expected too much. He turned away, heart pounding, every instinct screaming to leave. His hand tightened around the cart handle. Afraid? She called after him. The word stopped him cold. Silence followed. Heavy. Expectant. Slowly he turned back. I'm not afraid, he said. I just know when I'm being laughed at. Her smile faltered for the first time, just barely. That's not laughter, she said. That's opportunity. Something shifted inside him. A quiet, dangerous resolve. He looked at the floor, then at the piano, then at the faces watching him like he was part of the evening's entertainment. He released the cart. The sound of it settling echoed louder than it should have. A few people gasped. Phones rose higher. He took one step toward the piano. The laughter softened, turning uncertain. Another step. His breathing steadied. The noise of the room faded, replaced by something older, deeper, pulsing beneath his ribs. He reached the bench and stopped. For a moment he didn't sit. The woman's voice cut in, sharper now. Well? He placed a hand on the piano's edge. The room leaned forward. And just before he sat down, before a single key was touched, he closed his eyes, while every person there waited for him to fail. The room seemed to hold its breath as he lowered himself onto the bench. The leather creaked softly beneath his weight, a small, intimate sound that somehow carried across the vast space. He did not touch the keys yet. His hands rested on his knees, fingers slightly curled, as if they were remembering something before his mind allowed it. A cough sounded near the bar. Someone laughed nervously. Well? She said again, impatience slipping into her voice now. If you're going to do this, at least don't waste everyone's time. He opened his eyes. Up close, the piano looked even more intimidating. The keys were pristine, untouched by sweat or uncertainty. He imagined the cost of repairing even a single scratch and felt the old reflex rise in him, the instinct to be careful, to make himself small. A man in a tailored suit leaned toward his companion. This is painful, he whispered. Someone stop it. Security glanced toward her, waiting for a signal. She lifted her chin slightly, as if daring him. You can still walk away, she said. No one will blame you. The lie sat between them, heavy and obvious. He placed one hand above the keys, hovering. It trembled, just a little. A woman near the windows shook her head. This is cruel, she murmured, though she didn't look away. He inhaled slowly, deeply, the way he used to before auditions. The smell of polish and champagne faded, replaced by something else: dusty practice rooms, cracked mirrors, a metronome ticking steadily in the background. His shoulders loosened despite himself. Wait, someone suddenly said. All eyes shifted to the voice. An older man, silver-haired, standing near the back. He said he doesn't play. This is embarrassing. She didn't turn. He chose to sit down. The pressure in the room thickened. What had started as amusement now teetered on discomfort. People shifted their weight, unsure which reaction was socially acceptable anymore. He lowered his other hand. His fingers brushed the ivory. A sharp, collective intake of breath rippled through the guests, as if the simple contact had crossed an invisible line. "Don't!" someone hissed. Too late. The first note sounded. It wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. It was careful, controlled, and perfectly placed. The room stilled. Brows furrowed. Smiles froze. He played another note. Then another. Each one deliberate, as if he were testing not the piano, but the space itself, measuring how much truth it could hold. Her confident posture shifted. Almost imperceptibly. She leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "That's not bad," someone whispered. The melody began to form, soft and restrained, threading its way through the air. It wasn't showy. It didn't beg for attention. It simply existed, steady and sincere, and that somehow made it impossible to ignore. Conversations died mid-sentence. Glasses hovered near lips forgotten. The janitor's back straightened. His breathing slowed. His fingers stopped trembling. The piano responded to him as if relieved. The music grew bolder, richer, weaving something familiar yet unplaceable, something that tugged at the chest without warning. His hands moved with confidence now, crossing, lifting, returning with a precision that came from years of repetition. Her smile vanished entirely. She stepped closer, heels clicking sharply against the floor, eyes fixed on his hands. "That's enough," she said, though the words lacked conviction. He didn't stop. The melody deepened, filling the room with layered emotion, loss, longing, resilience. It wasn't a performance meant to impress. It was a conversation, one he'd been waiting years to finish. A woman pressed a hand to her mouth. A man near the bar slowly lowered his phone, forgotten. The older man in the back straightened, his expression changing from irritation to disbelief. Her voice cut through again, louder this time. "Stop." The note lingered in the air as he lifted his hands from the keys. Silence crashed down, heavy and absolute. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then someone began to clap. One pair of hands. Tentative. Uncertain. Another joined. Then another. The applause spread unevenly, confused, as if the room hadn't yet decided whether this was allowed. Some people remained frozen, staring at him like he had violated an unspoken rule. She didn't clap. "Who are you?" she demanded. He stood slowly, the bench scraping faintly behind him. "Just the janitor," he said. "That's not true," she snapped. "No one plays like that by accident." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "He's trained. Did you hear that control? That was professional." Her jaw tightened. "Answer me." He met her gaze, calm now in a way that unsettled her. "I did answer." She scoffed, though her eyes betrayed unease. "You expect us to believe you clean floors by choice?" "No," he said simply. The word landed harder than any insult. A man near the piano cleared his throat. "Where did you study?" The question felt invasive, but not mocking. He hesitated. The old instinct to deflect rose again. He pushed it down. "I studied wherever they'd let me. Conservatories. Churches. Public halls. Anywhere with a piano that wasn't locked." A hush fell over the room. "You gave that up?" she asked. He looked at the keys. "Life asked me to." Her laugh came out brittle. "So this is what? Some kind of revenge? You let me make a fool of myself?" "I tried to leave," he said quietly. "You stopped me." A sharp inhale swept through the crowd. Someone whispered. "She did." She folded her arms, suddenly defensive. "I made a joke." "At my expense," he replied. The words weren't angry. That made them worse. The older man stepped forward now. You said you'd marry him if he could play. A ripple of shock followed. She turned on him. Don't be ridiculous. You said it, he insisted. We all heard. Eyes darted between them. Phones rose again, this time recording something far more dangerous than embarrassment. Her face flushed. It was clearly a joke. Promises don't feel like jokes when you're the one being laughed at, he said. The room buzzed with tension. This was no longer entertainment. This was consequence. She looked around, searching for allies, for laughter, for control. She found none. Security shifted uncomfortably. So what? She said finally, her voice tight. You expect me to, what, apologize? He shook his head. I didn't sit down for that. Then why did you? The question hung between them, raw and exposed. He took a breath. Because for once, I didn't want to disappear. The words struck something deep in the room. People shifted, suddenly aware of their own silence, their own complicity. Her gaze flickered, uncertainty creeping in where arrogance once lived. You embarrass me. You embarrass yourself, someone said softly from the crowd. She whipped around, stunned. The control she wielded so easily was slipping, and everyone could feel it. She turned back to him, voice low. This isn't over. He met her stare without flinching. I know. The piano loomed behind him, silent again but changed, like it had revealed a truth that could not be put back. The room waited. And for the first time that night, she didn't know what would happen next. The silence stretched longer than anyone expected, thick enough to feel like pressure against the skin. No one laughed now. No one reached for a drink. The city lights outside seemed dimmer somehow, as if even they were listening. He was still standing near the bench, hands relaxed at his sides, breathing steady. The calm that settled over him surprised even himself. For years he had learned how to vanish, how to fold into the background until the world passed him by. But now that he had stepped forward, something inside him refused to retreat again. She broke the silence with a sharp exhale, brushing an invisible crease from her dress. You think you've proven something, she said. Talent doesn't erase reality. He looked at her, really looked this time. Up close, the confidence she wore so easily had fractures running through it. Fine lines near her eyes. A tightness in her jaw that suggested this wasn't the first time control had slipped through her fingers. I wasn't trying to erase anything, he replied. Just to be heard. A murmur rippled through the room. You were heard, she said quickly. Congratulations. You played well. Very well. But let's not pretend this changes who you are. Her words were meant to cut. Instead, they slid past him. I know exactly who I am, he said. Someone near the back laughed softly, not mockery this time, but disbelief at her insistence. The sound made her stiffen. And who is that? She asked. He hesitated, then reached into the inner pocket of his uniform jacket. The movement drew immediate attention. A security guard took a step forward before stopping, uncertain. He pulled out a folded, worn envelope. The edges were frayed, the paper softened by time. I was supposed to be a concert pianist, he said calmly. International circuit. Scholarships. Sponsors. He unfolded the paper just enough to glance at it. This was my acceptance letter. Full ride. The room leaned in collectively. I practiced 8 hours a day, he continued. I slept under my piano bench when I couldn't afford rent. I believed, really believed, that if I worked hard enough, the world would make space for me. Her eyes flicked to the letter, then back to his face. What happened? Someone asked quietly. My mother got sick, he said. No insurance. No safety net. Music didn't pay hospital bills fast enough. The words were simple. They didn't need embellishment. So you gave up, she said. No, he replied. I paused. A beat. And then life didn't let me press play again. The older man stepped closer, his voice low and respectful. Who did you study under? He named a professor known even among the elite. A collective inhale followed. That's impossible, she said. I would have heard of you. He smiled faintly. Most people don't hear about the ones who disappear. The truth of it settled over the room like a slow realization. This wasn't a trick. This wasn't luck. This was something buried, something deliberately ignored. She glanced around, searching again for someone to laugh with her, to anchor her certainty. Instead, she found eyes filled with judgment. Not of him, but of her. You still humiliated me, she said, lowering her voice. I didn't ask you to promise marriage, he replied. The reminder hit like a slap. A man near the windows cleared his throat. You did say it. Phones were no longer discreet. This was already escaping the room. She drew a slow breath, forcing composure. Fine. Let's talk honestly. She gestured toward the piano. If you're that good, why are you here cleaning floors? Because dignity doesn't always come with a paycheck, he said. And because someone has to do the work everyone else pretends not to see. A young woman in the crowd nodded, eyes shining. That doesn't answer the question, she snapped. It does, he said gently. You just don't like the answer. Her lips parted, then closed. For the first time, she looked unsure of what to say next. He turned slightly, addressing the room now. I didn't come here tonight to expose anyone. I came to earn a living. I sat at that piano because I was pushed into a corner. And because somewhere along the way, I got tired of apologizing for existing. The words resonated, striking something deep and uncomfortable in the space. The older man spoke again. You should be on a stage. He shrugged. Stages come and go. She scoffed, though the sound lacked conviction. So what? You expect sympathy? No, he said. Just respect. The simplicity of it disarmed her. Respect was not a currency she was used to giving freely. A long pause followed. The air felt charged, fragile. You realize, she said slowly, that this will cost me. I realize it already has, he replied. Her eyes flashed. I built everything I have. No one handed it to me. I didn't say they did. But you're letting them turn on me, she said, gesturing to the room. They're choosing, he answered. Just like you did. The distinction stung. She looked at the piano, then back at him. Play again. The request was abrupt, almost desperate. He studied her face. Why? Because if you're going to tear something down, she said, you should at least finish what you started. He considered the keys, then the people watching. Slowly, he sat again. This time, he didn't ease into the music. The first chord rang out strong and unapologetic. The piece he played was nothing like before. It surged and climbed, full of defiance and sorrow intertwined. His fingers flew, not for approval, but release. Each note carried years of restraint breaking apart. The room felt smaller, closer, like the walls were listening too. She stood frozen, arms at her sides, breath shallow. The music reached a crescendo that felt almost unbearable, then dissolved into something quiet and resolute. When the final note faded, no one clapped. They didn't need to. He rose from the bench and turned to her. That's who I am, he said. The truth of it settled like dust after an explosion. She swallowed hard, her composure finally cracking. You could have stayed silent. So could you, he replied. The crowd watched, sensing the shift, the inevitable reckoning approaching. Her promise hovered between them now, no longer a joke, no longer escapable. And everyone knew the next move would change everything. The aftermath did not arrive all at once. It came in small, uncomfortable waves. A shuffle of feet. A cough that sounded too loud. The distant hum of the city outside pressing faintly against the glass. No one quite knew where to stand anymore, or who was supposed to speak first. She was the one who usually filled silences. Tonight, the silence filled her. Her gaze moved slowly across the room, taking in faces that had once mirrored her amusement, and now reflected something closer to expectation. Judgment, maybe? Curiosity. A quiet hunger to see how this would end. Power had a way of shifting when no one announced it. She straightened her shoulders, the movement deliberate, practiced. "You've made your point," she said, though her voice lacked its earlier sharpness. "Enjoy your victory." He shook his head. "This was never about winning." "That's easy to say when you're the one everyone's applauding," she replied, a trace of bitterness slipping through. A woman near the piano spoke softly, almost to herself. "It wasn't applause. It was listening." The words lingered. She turned toward the speaker, then stopped herself. Arguing now would only make things worse. She exhaled slowly and looked back at him. For the first time, she didn't see a uniform. She saw a man who had stood where she stood now, exposed, judged, stripped of the story he had carefully built to survive. "You humiliated me," she said again, but this time it sounded less like an accusation and more like a confession. He met her eyes. "You gave me the stage." A flicker of something unreadable crossed her face. Regret, perhaps. Or recognition. The older man cleared his throat. "You made a promise." The room leaned in almost imperceptibly. Her jaw tightened. "I made a reckless comment. In public," someone added. "And repeated it," another voice said. The pressure mounted, not loud, not aggressive, but relentless in its calm certainty. This was the danger of words spoken without thought. They didn't vanish when laughter faded. They waited. She closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, something in her expression had shifted. The arrogance was still there, but cracked now, threaded with something human. "You don't actually want that," she said to him. "Do you?" He considered her question carefully. "No," he said. "I don't want to be married to someone who doesn't see me." A collective breath released through the room. She nodded once, as if accepting a verdict she couldn't appeal. "Fair." For a moment they stood there, facing each other across an invisible line neither had noticed before tonight. "What do you want, then?" she asked. He looked around the room, at the piano, at the people who had laughed, and then listened. "I want the joke to end," he said. "Not just for me. For anyone who's been standing in the background waiting to be acknowledged." The words struck deeper than any performance. She followed his gaze, suddenly aware of the staff lining the edges of the room, watching silently. Servers. Cleaners. People who had made this night possible without being invited to enjoy it. Her voice softened. "You could have asked for money. Or connections." "I don't need either," he replied. "I needed dignity." She let out a slow breath. "You already have it." "Not because you gave it to me," he said. "Because I claimed it." Something in her eyes shimmered, and for a second she looked younger. Tired. Human. The applause came then, not scattered, not uncertain. Unified. Strong. It wasn't for the music anymore. It was for the moment. She waited for it to die down before speaking again. "You should not be cleaning floors," she said quietly. "Not if you don't want to." "I don't mind honest work," he replied. "I mind being invisible." She nodded. "That I can understand." The city lights outside pulsed faintly, indifferent to human reckonings. Inside, something irreversible had already happened. "I won't insult you by pretending that one night fixes everything," she said. "But I will say this." She turned to the room. "What happened here tonight was my fault." The admission rippled outward, stunning in its simplicity. "I forgot," she continued, "that talent doesn't wear labels. And dignity doesn't announce itself." No one interrupted her. She looked back at him. "I can't undo what I said. But I can choose what I do next." "And what's that?" he asked. She gestured toward the piano. "That instrument was meant to be heard. So were you." A pause. "If you ever want that stage back," she added, "it's yours. Not because I feel guilty. Because you earned it." He studied her face, searching for mockery, for pity. He found neither. Thank you, he said. But I'll decide where I play. A faint smile touched her lips. I figured you would. People began to move again, conversations restarting in hushed tones, the energy of the room permanently altered. Phones buzzed with messages already spreading beyond the penthouse walls. This story would travel. It would be told and retold, reshaped and exaggerated. But the truth of it would remain. He stepped away from the piano, walking slowly back toward the service corridor. A few people moved aside instinctively, giving him space they hadn't known to offer before. She watched him go. Just before he reached the doorway, she called out, "Wait!" He turned. She hesitated, then spoke plainly. "I meant what I said earlier. About boredom." A small, rueful smile. "You cured mine." He nodded once. "Be careful what you joke about," he said. "Sometimes the universe listens." A few people laughed softly, not cruelly this time, but with recognition. He disappeared down the corridor, the door closing gently behind him. The piano sat in the center of the room, no longer a symbol of excess, but of something reclaimed. She stood alone beside it for a moment, fingers brushing its polished surface. The reflection staring back at her looked different now, less certain, more awake. The city continued to glitter outside, unaware that a promise made in arrogance had been transformed into a lesson in humility. And somewhere below, a man walked out into the night with his head high, no longer invisible, carrying with him the quiet knowledge that dignity, once claimed, could never be taken away again.